It's good to make some new friends and new acquaintances in the ministry and in church. It was a blessing to meet Brother Paul a couple of, months back, and really liked him, and he's got a great spirit about him. And I just figured, man, if the pastor's anything like him, it's a great church. That's what I thought. I mean, that's just the thoughts that were going through my head. And now I don't know you guys well, and so I don't know anything, and so amen, we'll just keep it like that. But I've always thought and taught that Christianity without a local church is just a theory, really. You get to practice your Christianity. So anyway, my name is Brother Rue, Chris Rue. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised there, and grew up in the under the influence of the Landmark Baptist Church under John Rawlings. He led my great-grandfather to Christ. My grandfathers were both first-generation Christians after World War II. They came back, both served and both fought, and praise the Lord, they came back. Both died early, except for my grandfather on my father's side, but they got saved after the war due to that church. And Dr. John actually led my great-grandfather to Christ in Sharonville. He owned a restaurant there that was called the Candle Glow Inn, and Dr. John went in there and led him to Christ, one day. And so it's praise the Lord for the influence of a local church, whether big or small. That church is what stands between that community and hell, really. And so we had tragedy on both sides of our family. My parents were married young. There was death on both sides of the family, and so there was just trouble. You know how that destabilizes a home and a family. So my parents got married, and they were just kind of your typical second-generation Christians. They really hadn't made up their mind, and the way I understand it from my dad's friends is that he really changed after coming back from, he was in the Marines, and kind of had to join up during the Vietnam, and he just came back a different person. And so that led to divorce, and I got saved. I was a bus kid. My mom at the time wasn't going to church, but she always put us on a bus. And on a bus, I remember receiving Christ. I remember my first recollections of the Lord dealing with me in a little Sunday school class and dealing with me about preaching. I remember that. And I didn't remember that until years after I got right. And so being raised in a divorced home, being, just tossed back and forth between mom and dad, custody battles, and all that stuff, I ended up just getting bitter. I got very bitter against the Lord, and even though I had these times where I was very on fire for the Lord, I just got bitter and just decided, I'm not going to serve you. I told him, I'm just not going to serve you anymore. And so at the mature age of 14, I made such a dumb decision. And I went out into the world and just told everybody I was an atheist. I wasn't an atheist. I was saved, but it was just the easiest way to get Christians off your back because nobody knew what to say if you told them that you were an atheist. And I didn't like being confronted because deep down, if you pushed very hard, I knew I'd just crumble because I knew that my happiest times were with Jesus Christ. I knew that. And so I went out into the world for the longest time. I guess it was about 7 years. And I always loved Dr. Ruckman. Went to Camp Chautauqua. My dad always talked very highly of him, and he was just, kind of a household name. I just took Dr. John and Dr. Ruckman for granted, really, not realizing, really what a blessing they were to our family and to the church. And so spent 7 years in the hog pen. And then I heard Dr. Ruckman was preaching at the Mount Hope Baptist Church in Harrison, and I was terribly under conviction. And I went on a Friday night, and by that time I was playing lead guitar in a heavy metal band, and I had all our band members. And I talked the drummer into coming to church with me, and I told him I'd buy him drinks after church if he'd come. That's how I was far gone. And so he came, and then I think I cried the whole day Saturday. I was under such conviction, and I went back Saturday night, that time alone, and I went late, and it was just overflow down in the basement, and the Lord just dealt with me. He just dealt with me, and it's now or never. You get right now, or because the Lord had dealt with me about once a year, and I'd make a decision no, I'm not ready to come home. And it would just get worse. And it had gotten pretty bad, and so I got right. Went down forward and got right, and the Lord reminded me of that call. The Lord began to deal with me about preaching. Went to PBI, and God confirmed the call to go to be a missionary. And from there, the Lord led me to Bulgaria. There was a missionary that came by. He was a PBI grad. His name was Ricky Bolik. I don't know if you know him. But I was already praying about the former Soviet Union. This was about 1991. And he came through, and I was praying about that part of the world. I just didn't know which part. And so he told me about a missions conference that was going on up in Tennessee. And I went up there, and there was kind of a little revival breaking out. And the Lord spoke to me, and I just knew that I needed to go to Bulgaria. And so the Lord kind of confirmed with signs following, kind of a deal, where God was just doing some things that were, He made it very, very clear to me that He called me and wanted me to be a missionary. And He provided in ways that were just amazing. That's a whole another story, and I don't have the time to tell you right now. But we went to Bulgaria, and we were preaching on the street every day, prayer meetings. I mean, it was just going like gangbusters. Just ministry, ministry, ministry. It was wonderful, preaching in gypsy villages and going, preaching on the street in the big cities. And it was just, you could gather a crowd like that. 40 to 80 people, and you just preach all day long to new crowds and getting people saved. And the missionaries that were called there, they kind of had this rapport with the people, and it just wasn't there. I love the people, but it wasn't there. And then a woman from Ukraine came, and she said, she was just bawling her eyes out, just, please come to Ukraine. We need Bibles. We need preachers. And her cry and her, we couldn't get away from it. And so I got on a boat with another guy, and we just sailed to Ukraine. And we landed on July the 4th, 1992, and you could just pay for a tourist visa at the border. That had just happened the week prior, or 2 weeks prior. They opened up the borders like that. You didn't need a visa. You can just pay and get one. And they gave me visa number 666, which was a little bit weird. I remember that. And so the Lord just kind of led us the rest of the way. And she wasn't from Odessa, like she said. She was like 2 hours inland, where nobody goes. No Americans had ever been there before. And the Lord got us from the port to a taxi. The taxi took us to a telephone. It was like the only place you could make a phone call. You had to go to the post office, and they would listen to your calls, And from there, we got on a tram, from a tram to a train. We got standing in this huge, it's a city of 1 million people, and you don't know the language. And all you got is a change of clothes and a box of Bibles, and you got God. And the Lord got us on a train, and then we had an address, and they were just like, just keep going, just keep going. And then we finally ended up getting off at this, we rode for about an hour and a half, and we got off of that train, and then we figured here we are, and people were using sign language. Nope, just you got to get on this bus. And so we got on a bus, and we rode that bus for about an hour. And it was packed. I mean, it was just literally shoulder to shoulder. I was holding on for dear life, and the doors were closing because it was just, that's the way they do things. Sardines, You feel like sardines. And so we got on a bus, and we rode that for forever. And finally, everybody had gotten off but us. And everybody kept saying, you just keep going. And there was one tall, lanky young man. He had a hat on that said USA. And it turned out, we started communicating with him, that he said, I'm the son of this woman. And so the Lord just kind of got us, found her, and just started preaching everywhere. And that's where the Lord just broke my heart for Ukraine, fell in love with the people. And I surrendered to go there as a missionary and spend my life telling those people about Jesus Christ. And went back to Bulgaria. We spent about 3 days preaching all around, and went back to Bulgaria. And every time we have a prayer meeting, I said, Lord, I just want to go back to Ukraine. I just want to go back to you. Would you make a way for me to go back to Ukraine? And so we would have a prayer meeting with the missionaries, Brother Bolik and Jeff Stewart, Richard Mayer, if you know him. He was in that crowd. And we'd meet every morning at 7 o'clock for prayer. We'd have prayer meeting every night, read the Bible together, and then we'd hit the streets, soul winning stuff. And Brother Bullock shows up one morning. He said, you would never guess who called me last night. I said, who? He said, Dr. Ruckman. Dr. Ruckman called me last night and said his meeting in Romania fell through, and he wants me to set up some meetings for him over here. And he said, I think that we need to go to Ukraine. Brother Rue, we're going to go to Ukraine and get some meetings set up for Dr. Ruckman. And so the Lord answered my prayer, and I got to go back to Ukraine with Dr. Ruckman, and we preached all around. It was a wonderful time. And so that's how we kind of got started. And we've just been busy ever since. And so this is our family. We started off just my wife and I. I went back and finished PBI my third year, and I was single then. But then we ended up graduating Friday night. The preachers preached Saturday night. Church was Sunday, and I got married Monday. After being engaged for a month, after only really courting each other for 2 weeks. Or no, we courted for a month, and then we got married 2 weeks later. It was just, I don't recommend you do that, but that was just, we knew that the Lord brought us together for His will. And I could never do what we've done and live there without my wife. I'm just a Cincinnati kid, and she's from the hills of Tennessee, and she just knew how to do stuff I've never done in my life, And so it's just been wonderful. It's been great. And the Lord's given us 7 children. One of them is not in this picture, but this is from left to right. This is Samuel, Benjamin. This is Michael and Miriam, Christopher, and Joseph. And my wife is Naomi, and my name is Christopher. Joshua's not in the picture, and Miriam's not with us. She went down to say hello and say kind of goodbye to her friends down at Bible Baptist in Pensacola. So that's where she's at right now. Anyway, the Lord's called us to the former Soviet Republic of Ukraine. Still very much got a lot of socialist issues about it. Praise the Lord. This monument that's been standing in our town forever. Notice that they paint them gold. They have their idols, their humanism, and praise the Lord, they've been going through that de-Russification of Ukraine, where they're trying to get Russia's, off their back and let them have their own culture and history and everything else. The Soviet Union really kind of quelched that. They didn't want the individual republics to have their own identity. And so Ukraine right now is fighting for her identity and trying to figure out who she is, because it used to be we're part of the Soviet Union, and that gave them, we're a superpower. And then when that whole thing collapsed, they were in this vacuum, not really knowing who they were. Their history had been pretty much robbed from them anyway. And so now they're trying to figure out who they are, and this was by the year 2000, the Orthodox Church kind of stepped in and is giving them their identity. To be Ukrainian is to be Orthodox is to be Ukrainian. And to change your religion or to get rebaptized now is considered, you're a traitor practically. And so the Orthodox Church has made big inroads. That is a Russian, by the way. There's a Russian Orthodox Church and there's a Ukrainian Orthodox Church. And something happened during our last term that was kind of unheard of. The Eastern Orthodox churches, I think that there's 9, I forget how many different divisions there are with Eastern Orthodoxy. And Ukraine traditionally used to be under Russia. But then when this whole thing happened with the war, Ukraine actually separated from the Russian Patriarchy, which they said something like that has never happened since the schism that, 1,000 years ago. So anyway, this is a Russian priest blessing the automatic weapons for Russian soldiers to kill, Ukrainians. And so this is how serious it is right now. It's a very agricultural place. We love it. There's farmers market is pretty much the main market, and this is how you buy your meat every day. It's very fresh, And most people live out of their gardens. They're trying to make ends meet. And these were pictures taken down at this was quite a few years ago, but this was right down the street from our house where we lived and where we shopped. And this is how you bought your bread. And the Lord started moving me to minister out in these places where nobody goes. And it's not easy. It's hard. Life there is really, you're just existing. But the city's easy. There's a lot of people in the cities, but it's just convenient. But nobody goes to these people. And the Lord put it on my heart, we have to do something, So this is a community farm town. The difference between, like out here where you are, you see all these farmers. You see the land, you'll see he has his house, his barn, farmers live pretty good here, amen? The difference between communism and our system is, this is a town and there was about that many houses over here, but as far as the eye could see, if you could stand on this point where I took this picture, you would see no houses, no barns, nothing but just land, endless land. And these are the farmers, and this is their community barn, and these guys work all of this land, and they live in dire poverty. And that's the difference. And so it's agriculture. The biggest crops are wheat and sunflower seeds. These are pictures that we just snap because we see it every day. And the Lord sent us there for our first term, and we had to learn the language, get acquainted with the culture, and we began laying the foundation for the work. You have to learn the language, and down where we are, it's predominantly Russian. Any city that had strategic importance to the Soviet Union, they would uproot all of the Ukrainians and send them out to work in the farms or Siberia or wherever else they needed. And then what they would do is they would import Russians in that location because that's just how Russia's always done it. And so where we are, we speak Russian. There's some that speak Ukrainian, but we speak Russian. And so the Lord opened up a door for me to study in the Odessa State University, and I studied there 6-7 years, and that's how I got my visa. I ended up getting a couple of different degrees, certificates, and stuff. It was kind of a necessary thing. I like this one because Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and you can see the hammer and sickle right there. And so anyway, you can't get those anymore, so it's kind of history. So Ukraine's divided up into these administrative districts. We would call them states. They call them oblasts. And down here on the Black Sea is the Odessa Oblast, or the Odessa State. And right there is where we minister, and Odessa's here, and we started driving out here and started where we didn't want to build on another man's foundation. And I thought that there was a Bible believer in Odessa, and Dr. Ruckman had said, give about 50 miles between you and the next guy. And so we ended up out there. And it's not easy. Like I said, I have all of my romantic notions about the ministry have long gone. And so anyway, we're here in Razdelnaya, and we went out here and started with nothing. And God gave me a translator. We met him during my first survey trip, and his name was Taras Alexandrovich. He translated for Dr. Ruckman too, and also, I don't know if you know Pastor Rick DeMichael. He visited us like in '95. I didn't know him, he didn't know me, he just kind of showed up on my doorstep. And so Brother DeMichael always called him Stalin, And he wasn't saved back then, but he got saved. Eventually got saved. He was translating Dr. Ruckman's theological studies. We started translating back in the 90s, and so anyway, just started preaching the gospel, and God just gave fruit. A lot of people in heaven today. He's in heaven. She's with us. She moved out. She's not doing so good. She's doing good. They're doing great. She's doing great. She's in heaven. And so anyway, she's in heaven. She's in heaven. He's in heaven. She's in heaven. She's on her way. She's real close. I don't know if the Lord healed her. That's Babushka Raya, I think, right? I think so. And anyway, just God gave us fruit, and we're really thankful for it. And we married them and buried them and counseled them, and with their marriages and trying to figure out. She was a survivor of a Ravensbrück concentration camp, death camp. That other lady, Babushka Raya, where is she at? There she is. She was a sniper in World War II. I mean, I was her pastor for like 20 years. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way. Unbelievable. She said, yeah, there was a German running across the field, and he went. She's a sweet lady. Anyway, she really is. I mean, when she got saved, she was going to a Pentecostal church, and it was all works. And then she came because nobody else was giving out Bibles. And Dr. Ruckman came back, took up a big offering, and we had Bibles. They didn't have Bibles back then. And she came to get a free Bible, And then she heard the gospel after a couple of weeks. And then we drove from Odessa out there, and she was waiting by the door. And she lit up. I got it. I got it. It's not what we do, but it's what he's done. And I mean, she'd been a soul winner ever since. Just a blessing, great blessing. So anyway, I get through these pictures here. Got to give lots of Bibles. I know that we've given probably at least 10,000, just whole Bibles. I don't know how many New Testaments. I have no idea how many Gospels of John. We had a container full. There was something like 250,000, and those are all gone. And we were able to organize the Bible Baptist Church of Razdelnaya. These were our charter members, and this was our first Bible Institute. Some guys out where that woman I told you about, that was a town called Limansky. And we went out there with Dr. Ruckman and kind of got things started. I ended up in Razdelnaya, which was about a 40-minute drive away, 45-minute drive. And there's a church there now. And Brother Richard Mayer went over and started working in Limansky. And he had some guys, I had some guys, we got them together, and we had a Bible Institute. And it wasn't anything real big, nothing serious, just 4 hours, one night a week. And then also during that term, God gave us 2 blessings. There was Miriam and Joshua. And then we went back for a second term. We didn't go to Ukraine with a full deputation. We had, I think, 10 meetings over the course of 4 months after we got married, and we just left. And God kept us there for 5 years before our first furlough. We came back, we did some deputation for a year, and then we went back for another term. And that's when the ministry started, we started building more. Had a little bit of a foundation. We got this building. We bought a house, renovated it. This was our opening. Sunday we had a couple of visitors in there, but we can seat 70. We had 85 in there that day. But we can seat, right now we have 66 seats. I thought that was a kind of a cool number. We have a baptistry that kind of takes up a lot of room, and we can bring in another row of 4, and we have at times brought in, and so you can get 70 people in there, and it's crowded. It's pretty congested, and the oxygen doesn't last long. But anyway, we started working with Sunday school, training our teachers, and with children's ministries, giving Sunday school seminars to our church and other churches in the area. We started with using the tent and doing daily vacation Bible school, which we've had now for over 20-something years. The Nationals are running everything now. It's great. Our kids love it. It's like the highlight. Our kids love to participate, and they do all kinds of things and just love it on the kids. And we started also putting some effort in a youth group and just kind of existing like other churches, like you do here. Just all kinds of events and occasions and holidays, and God just kept giving us fruit, and like I said, you just marry them and bury them and counseling them, and there's a lot of people like her. They're in heaven. He's in heaven. He's now the pastor of our church. Just a blessing. He's in heaven. There he is finally. Taras Stalin. Stalin got saved. And so anyway, yeah, she's in heaven. She's hanging on. She's in heaven. Anyway. Just kept working, kept plugging away. We got our kitchen brigade, just like a Baptist church does. And started personal work, started a medical ministry. This lady right here, we moved into a house in Odessa. And we were still traveling back and forth because that's how I had to get my visa. And I inherited this, I had oversight of this apartment next door. Now, she is a nurse from America, and she was retired. Baby Christian, didn't have the right Bible. She took her retirement money, bought an RV, which Ukrainians had never seen an RV before. And she worked with, this was a translator, and she was a doctor. And what she started doing was she was going around to different villages and kind of doing a humanitarian type of a ministry, giving people medicine and treating them with like a doctor's office on wheels. Now, I had worked with my stepdad at Landmark, and they had the Samaritans, I forgot what they called it, Medical Samaritans. And he took an 18-wheeler and converted it into a drugstore, a doctor's office, reception area, and they would go into the poor towns and poor sections of Cincinnati, and they would treat people for free. And so I watched the way they did that ministry, and I told her about it. And I said, we can make this more evangelistic and have a circuit riding evangelistic ministry. And so we were one of the stops on her route, and we got her, and then she started. I'd get up like 5 o'clock in the morning, prepare for Bible Institute, drive, an hour and a half out to Bible Institute, teach and preach for 4 hours, drive an hour and a half back, wore out, having to write my own materials, translate my own materials. I'd just be kind of dragging in, and she'd be waiting for me by the window. She'd be waiting with Bible questions. And I gave her some of the theological studies, and then she got right on the Bible, and then she just fell in love with Jesus Christ, and then she was like, you know what, I think I came to Ukraine to get to know Jesus Christ and be discipled. And so she'd wait for me, and I'd sit there, and then before I could even walk in my own house, she would be there, and I'd sometimes be teaching her the Bible for 2 more hours. But she's a blessing. She's doing great now. And at about this time, Don Sturtz with Couriers for Christ. Have you heard of him? His people, his ancestry goes back to Poland or the Baltic nations. His dad got saved. He was a Lutheran, and then they came here to America. And after he got saved, he told his sons, do what you can to try to win our people. And so during communism, he would smuggle literature into the former Soviet Union. When the wall came down, his ministry just kind of began to transform. And he was constantly sending literature to missionaries through Bearing Precious Seed. And then he worked with a guy named Mark Rose in Belarus. And in Minsk, they promoted one big evangelistic campaign. Brought a bunch of Bibles, filled up, a huge theater or something like that. And that kind of became his pattern. And I met him with Rick DeMichael, like back in 1995, and they came to our house, and we sat down and we talked about, how can we reach Ukrainians with the gospel? And he asked, what do we need as far as literature? And so he contacted me and said, we want to have an evangelistic campaign, and we want you to host it. And I said, well, brother, I'm not in a big city. I mean, we're out where nobody goes, and they're much smaller towns. And I said we wouldn't be able to have one big meeting that get Americans excited, but I said we could have several smaller meetings. You'd be reaching the same amount of people. You're going to work a lot harder, but we're going to reach people that nobody is going to reach. And so he said, let's do it. And so he financed the whole thing, and I just had to set the whole thing up. And at the time, I had put together a Gospel of John for tent work, going out to places and just preaching the gospel. I couldn't afford to give people whole Bibles by then. Our 10,000 Bibles were gone. And so I put together a Gospel of John with hymns in it, like a little hymnal, and a clear-cut presentation of the gospel. And I figured we can give that to the people. They already have the hymns right there. I don't have to carry hymnals with us. And they can take that home. And I was asking God, please, I need 5,000 just to get started. They need 5,000 to get started. And we were just, just always month to month scraping the bottom of the barrel. And then Brother Sturtz calls me and says, I think we can get about 250,000 printed for you. And so that was a big answer to prayer. And we got all those printed up. And we've covered our town several times, a bunch of other outside villages and towns several times. And we promoted, this was the one in our town. We rented the biggest theater we could, filled it up. And I got to preach the gospel and give away free Bibles. People got saved, and we went into other towns like this one. I think this was Starostino and Yakovlivka. And we started kind of getting our feet wet with the tent ministry and renting halls like this, and working with the kids during the daytime and working with the grown-ups at night. And that has been, and it was, my vision for the longest time, trying to help nationals go to these places to reach the unreached with the gospel. And it's just hard. And those small towns are drying up more and more and more. What I see now is trying to get a church to be self-supporting, self-propagating, indigenous, as they say. I think that these smaller towns like that would probably be more like running soup kitchens. I think that you would have to have a lot of money and boots on the ground. It can be done, but you're going to need a bigger operation, and the Lord just hasn't provided that yet for us. So we've gone. I think now we've been in 18 different towns and villages, held evangelistic meetings and stuff like that. We've passed out literature and done what we could in the area, but they're drying up. Everybody's going to the city, because there's just no way to really live out there. So anyway, we had a Bible Institute again, and this time it was a full-time Bible Institute. Those were our first-year students. They came back for second year. A few more came along, and there were some serious-minded preachers in there, and some of them were just guys trying to get their lives together. And we had a graduation with Brother Mayer and myself and Brother Paul Gray, and these were our graduates. We had 12. And out of that group today, he's like an assistant pastor out west. He started a church, and he's been there now for, I guess, 10, 15 years. He's a preacher, a pastor. He's a missionary out in Siberia. He's not doing much today. He's a pastor now. He's not doing much. He's with the Lord. He's a blessing. The guy will quote whole psalms from memory all the time. He's a blessing. He's just solid, and he's a missionary out there in Altai as well. These guys were called to go out to Altai, and that's where they've been, and we just do what we can to support them. Our church in Ukraine now supports 6 missionaries, and we try to make it, if a missionary comes by, he's going to get at least $100. We're going to do what we can. If I know they're coming, we try to save up our money. I tell them, we're going to have a missionary, you guys save your money, and our people get excited. The one guy, Nikolai, that started that church, he comes every fall. We save up our money, and we give him enough money to buy, several cords of wood so that he can heat his house with his kids and to do the work out there. And a couple times people were like, Pastor, these missionaries are flying around here like bees on honey. And I'm like, that's the way we want it. Amen? Because they stir us up, and they're a real blessing. So we started working with literature. We translated a bunch of stuff, Bible Institute material. We got 3 years. This is already a published book. We've got stuff for the home, the family. John Stormer's Growing Up God's Way. We've put out theological studies. What Saith the Scriptures. We've translated Dr. Ruckman's 2 volumes of the local church, manuscript evidence, the Kingdom of God versus the Kingdom of Heaven. I mean, just a bunch of stuff. I don't have pictures of it in here just yet. This is an old presentation to some degree. Went back again for a third term, and this is when God moved us out there. This is when we actually physically moved to live out in Podunk, Ukraine. And we had gotten to the point where I said, Lord, I just can't do this. I can't live here and have to travel so far out there for meetings. It's just the money, the energy, the time was just wearing me out. And the Lord allowed us to register our church, and I could get a missionary visa, which was a big help. And then we came to the point where, Lord, if you want us to be out there, you need to do some certain things. And it wasn't a fleece, it was just practically we have to live, and we need a couple of things, and I just asked the Lord for some very specific things, and the next week God answered these, what I thought was an impossible request. And so he made it very clear he wanted us to move out there. And I thought, okay, we'll move out there in Podunk and dealing with no electricity and no water and living close to the ground. And, we've got chickens. We had a goat for a while. We helped people in the church. We raised beef and butchered ourselves, and we had ended up with an orchard. We had like 15, I don't know how many grapevines there were at the time. Like 10 cherry trees, 4 or 5 walnut trees, plums, pears, apples, nectarines. And this is, I love it now. It's great. You got to feed all these boys that we got. And so we just kept on working and kept on laboring, and God just continued to give us souls. And a lot of them they're doing fine. Some not so good. Some are with the Lord, promoting, by this time, pastors' conferences and stuff like that, continuing with the children's ministries, and started working and helping out an orphanage, old folks' homes. At this time, the Lord gave us some money. My parents helped us buy a house in Odessa, and we sold it, doubled our money, and I was able to buy a house out where we were. That was kind of the answer to prayer. And we had a bunch of money to work with. And I started financing youth camps. And for Bible believers. We had tried to get along with some of the others, and it was just the music, high pressure altar calls for the purpose of taking pictures. I don't do that. I don't like that. The Ukrainians are not stupid. They know when they're being exploited, and they know whenever you're just trying to use them to take a picture so that you can put money in your pocket. And we don't do that. And so we started, I don't know if you know Brother Sutek. He was in Romania for a while. So he came over for 2 years and preached there. He's in the Philippines now. And so this was another year. This was, it was great times. We had a revival breakout one year. This was our youth group then. But yeah, I think our last year that we had the money to finance it, got together on the last day, said, see you next year, kind of a meeting, let's have some testimonies. It was supposed to be a half an hour, and it turned into a 3-hour altar call. And an hour went by, and then they started getting saved. Somebody would get up and give a testimony. I think it was over, and I'd say, okay, well, let's sing a song. And I'd start singing, and I mean, the presence of God just got, wow. And then all of a sudden, they just started coming to the altar again. And then it was in waves. I'd think, okay, it's done now. The Lord, really, this is great. I've never seen anything like this before. And then, okay, let's sing another song. And then they started coming again. And then Brother Richard's daughter got saved, and another young man got saved, and people started getting saved. And it went on like that for 3 hours. And then the devil showed up, like usual. Anyway, just men's ministries. This is Brother Stas out in Altai. It's out there by Mongolia, where China, Mongolia, and I guess, Kazakhstan, they all meet. He's been out there now for years, reaching those Mongolians. This is a guy that's out of a church in Zhytomyr, and his name, he's a great street worker. I mean, he'd be an awful pastor, but he's a great street worker, and he's out of a Nationals church over there in Zhytomyr, and he kind of makes the rounds. He's one of those guys that kind of flies around our church like honey, and always trying to finance them, and he goes out on these evangelistic campaigns and stuff. So over the years, we put together a Sunday school program, 3-year rotating Sunday school program for 4 age groups. God gave us more children. We keep growing, amen. And then we went back, and we just continued to build on the ministry. And these are some of our most recent pictures, and of people that have gotten saved. And so, yeah. The Lord opened a door for us to be in a school, got to preach in the public schools, really thankful for that. And this was our Bible Institute here most recently. That picture represents 4 years of my life. Just, these are the graduates. And my wife continues with the women's ministries. There's our youth group, more today. And just continuing on with the ministry, supporting missions, training the nationals, loving on people, promoting stuff for families. And these are graduation times and just snapshots from the ministry. So we're thankful to be there, thankful for your help, thankful for your support. I can't find the pictures of all the ordinations that we've had. And I've looked and I can't find them. It's like there's this whole section of our ministries missing. But these guys were ordained on that day. They're out of Brother Richard's church. And there's my daughter and little Joey. And so just thankful for your prayers. And what we plan to do when we go back is we're turning the church over to Brother Alexei, and we are trying to help him build a bigger building. You can see this is the existing building, and we plan on building this here out of containers, shipping containers. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we've prayed and sought, and we've done everything that we can. We have the plans, we have the permission to do this. And it'll give us kind of a more of a base to be able to host meetings, because as it is right now, we can't even invite people to come. We can't invite other churches. We can't do anything besides just what we have, because there's no room. And so if you would, please pray about that. This is, Brother Alosha did this little digital thing. He's good with his computer. And so then we plan to, in addition, we're going to start laying the foundation, and we're going to start to work in the city of Odessa. I've been praying about this for years and years, and the Lord's finally given me the green light. And we plan to go there, and it's kind of a touristy town. It's really become very much like Europe. It's a little bit harder, but there's so many people. You know, it used to be the farmers markets, now you just got this. And that's what we plan to do, Lord willing. So thank you for your prayers. And so if there's any questions, I'll take them real quick. Yeah, it's just, sometimes we've had to come back for funerals unexpectedly. We stayed for a little bit longer because of pregnancies. Sometimes we've had to come back because of problems with your documents. There was a time whenever we had to leave the country once a year just to renew our visas. And that broke us. I mean, every time I'd come back, I'd go back to the field in debt over plane tickets, and that was a rough time. And so praise the Lord, we're over that. But yeah, it hasn't been a real clean. It looks clean maybe here, that, you know, clean 4 or 5 years and you come back for a year. It hasn't been that clean. It's just, you know, you fly by the seat of your pants and you just kind of, you know, pray as you go. Yeah, so. Yeah. Was there in 92 for our survey trip. And that's when God called me. And then we went back to finish my last year of PBI. We got married, and then my wife and I, we left November of 94. Oh, that's right, 93. I'm sorry, 93. We got stopped in Germany for a couple of months. And then we finally arrived. We did some work in Russia in a place called Krasnodar. And I was teaching in a Bible institute in Germany, which I didn't show here, and teaching refugees from Russia for a while and helping out we took a couple of trips with humanitarian aid to orphanages in Krasnodar. You know where Sochi was, where the Olympics? It's right next door to Sochi. And so I was there for a while. Led a guy to Christ in PBI who was a Russian, and he was begging me to go to his town to, you know, preach to his friends, and so that's what we did. And so yeah, since 94. And then we actually started our first meetings. I was preaching in different places, but where we have been all these years, we started that in like the first January of 1995. Yeah. So, thank you.